We sure are.
Sounds like you've already planned the package.
Well,
Already you're starting to make the agreements with Hard Rock, BMO, because with our Discovery Center and our beautiful parks that we have here and so many other things that go on in this area, I can see us becoming a really good tourist destination.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do encourage you to look in the packet. Gretchen did a wonderful job. You will see all these sold-out shows, less than half of those tickets are being sold to people from here. They're coming from Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, and that's exactly right. We view our mission, these are community assets. These need to serve our community, and they need to drive economic activity. That's it. The worst part about us having the mothball during COVID, we found a way to weather the storm. But we knew the restaurants, the bars, everyone else that relies upon us, there was nothing we could do. So we do think this allows, it's a piece in the puzzle of a tourist destination. We're starting to see it. We see at the Embassy Suites, when we have events there, they sell out. People come from out of town and stay overnight there.
one thing too, I am part of the Destination Master Plan with the CVB, so we will play an integral part in that. And one opportunity that we are missing here is the BMO can actually hold private events. We've got a couple coming up. Actually, some large corporations here in the community are going to be hosting events at our venue. We can host, we can have like 1,000 plated meals, and you really can't find that in the area. So we are ramping up that business as well, and that will bring people from out of town.
And I want to highlight that because one of our board's mantras is we're not here to compete with private facilities here or hotels that partially fund us, but we're able to serve a need that they can't. We did the Bergstrom event when they had it, and it was phenomenal a few years ago, and it was an 1,100 person plated dinner. There's not those facilities to do things at that magnitude, and we're able to do it, and they do a wonderful job.
One of the advantages we have too is the fact that we are, our economics here are a little bit cheaper than other places. And because of that, that's why we're dragging in the people from the big cities. They'd rather take the time to come here because it costs them a lot less money. I had a lot of that when the Discovery Center was built. How many people were coming here from the Chicago area? It was wonderful. Their grandparents would bring their kids out here, spend the day, enjoy it. I think this is just going to continue to multiply if we keep our prices good and can give them the services they need.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right.
Our contact information is there. Any of you, give us a call, shoot us an email. We'd be happy to answer any questions or follow-up information.
Very good. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there are no public hearings this evening, so we'll move to public participation. I'm going to read a short comment. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers may not address zoning matters which are pending before the ZBA, zoning committee, or the county board. Personnel matters or pending or threatened litigation may not be addressed in open session. An individual may speak a maximum of 3 times per calendar year on the same topic. This prohibition shall include the repetition of the same topic in a statement on what is purported to be a different topic. Personal attacks or inappropriate language of any sort will not be tolerated. This evening, our first speaker is Mr. John Mitchell from the Winnebago Boone Farm Bureau. Come forward, please.
Good evening, everyone. As the chairman said, my name is John Mitchell, and I serve as the president of Winnebago Boone Farm Bureau. Our local farm bureau here in Winnebago and Boone counties represents about 1,100 farmer members and nearly 7,000 associate members. So it's our mission to be the voice, resource, and advocate for farm families and agriculture while promoting stewardship for today and future generations. So we've been working on an opportunity with you all, and we appreciate you passing this to present a resolution supporting agriculture here in the county. Winnebago County agriculture supports over 7,000 jobs, or about 5% of the total jobs in the county, with the sales output estimated at $2.6 billion per year. So we hope you all see us and continue to see us as an important part of the community. We thank you for your support of the ProAg resolution here 2 meetings ago. And tonight we'd like to present to you all this plaque naming you as allies in agriculture. So present this to the chairman, and thank you all again.
All right, thank you. And we do appreciate the Farm Bureau. All right, our next speaker is Reverend Earl Dotson Sr.
The Bible. By faith Noah prepared an ark, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. The channels by which faith flows are as diverse as men and circumstances, yet beneath it all is that attitude of soul that confidently expects great things from God, pleasing him by that. Building an ark seemed like folly to his neighbors, and a good man condemns evil neighbors. Noah was a good man with evil neighbors. I have viewed some empty factory sites in Chicago, and we are seeking 65 acres, 65,000 acres, 35,000 on the south side where I was born, 30 on the west side, that will employ 5,000 workers, earning an average of $95,000 annually without a college degree, with a total payroll of $475 million. But only about 300 jobs we envision, and $30 million for West Side Rockford. And conversing yesterday afternoon with Cook County Economic Development people and their grant programs cemented my confident expectation from God. They have excellent programs. Toni Preckwinkle is Brother Chiarelli's counterpart in Cook County, one of the largest in America. And she is a strong supporter of economic development in disinvested communities and the new black mayor of Chicago. In this regard, he shares her sentiments, also boosting our expectation from God. As I mentioned to Congressman Danny Davis, in whose district the 30 acres will cover, just visualize 2,500 workers, many young black men earning $95,000 annually without a college degree on the west side of Chicago and on the south side of Chicago. And it's circulating 3 times there. The impact is staggering and long overdue. And he agreed. He, Preckwinkle, the new black mayor of Chicago, and a few others are supporters of this initiative of ours that is foundational in building sustainable community that will create a tsunami of wealth and ignored communities. America needs all the manufacturing capacity it can get with communist China threatening its economic and military hegemony. If it blockades the Taiwan Strait, that is, it proved it can do, where 60% of the global trade comes through, America's economy collapses or we go to war. Of course, I'll be comparing Chicago and Cook County's economic development niches with Rockford and Winnebago County for evaluation by appropriate authorities.
Thank you. Is there a Mr. Winter present? Mr. Winter? Very good. Next, we'll call up Ms. Joan Sage.
Thank you, Chairman and board members. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of Comcast. Today you will have before you the franchise renewal. This is our agreement to do business. What it does is it allows Comcast to put our cabling and our fiber in your easements. Then you have the opportunity to levy a franchise fee, which is something that the county does. And once a quarter, you are provided with the franchises that are on every customer's bill for video only. So you get that payment quarterly. We are very ruled by the FCC, so the agreement that you have is virtually the same one that you had 10 years ago, and the only change being, I think we're asking for an address list to make sure that you are getting all of the franchise fees that should be coming to you. We compare your list to ours to make sure that you're getting those dollars. So that is pretty much what it is, and attorney, if you have anything to add, can do that later, and if you have questions at the time when it comes up for vote, I'll be happy to do that. Even though the agreement is important, it's required by the FCC, to me personally, what is more important is that you have my business card. And that way, if there is anything that ever comes up between now and 10 years from now, because chances are nobody's going to be looking at the franchise, it'll be in the file, and then in 8, 9 years, we'll look at it again and say, it's time to renew. So you have that before you. And the other thing that you have that is very important is the flyer regarding our Internet Essentials program. Some of you are aware of this. Comcast started it 12 years ago. The speed was 6/1. The price was $9.95, and it was for families that had children either in the free or the reduced lunch program. Since then, we have grown things dramatically in terms of both speed and who is eligible. So we all know that COVID changed a lot of our lives. March 16th, people went home to work, they went home to school, they did all those things. And fortunately, Comcast had invested a lot of money in infrastructure so that 1 month of March, even though we were only home for half of the month, the usage on our network increased by 35%, and we did not miss a beat. So since then, we have invested more to make sure that our plant stays solid. The speed now for $9.95 a month for anyone who's on any kind of either state or federal aid, the price is still $9.95. The speed is 50/10. For those who have many more devices, we have the speed of 100/20. That price is $29.95, but there is the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP, where folks can get a $30 per month credit, so they virtually get their internet free. If they only need the $9.95, 50/10, they can use 24 toward their mobile phones. So that's it. If you have questions, I'll be here later. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Sage. All right, that concludes agenda number 5. We'll move on to number 6 is the approval of minutes. May I entertain a motion to approve the May 25th, 2023 minutes, lay over the June 8th, 2023 minutes. Motion by Mr. Guevara, second by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion? I hear none. Are there any board members opposed to that motion? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Number 7 is the consent agenda. May I have entertain a motion for the raffle report and the auditor's report. Mr. Thompson motions. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McCarthy. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to that approval? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Number 8 is the appointments. There are no appointments to read in this evening. Move on to reports of standing committees, which is the Finance Committee. Mr. Butita.
Okay, the first resolution this evening will be a resolution authorizing the renewal of a cable television franchise agreement with Comcast of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Hoffman. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Okay, we have another resolution authorizing the renewal of a cable television franchise agreement with Spectrum Mid-America also known as Charter Communications, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion? Are there any board members opposed to the approval of this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Okay, next is an ordinance amending the recorder's predictable fee schedule to institute mandated increase to rental housing support program state surcharge. And I move that we suspend the rules
Got a
on this.
motion to suspend by Mr. Butita. Is there a second? Mrs. Crosby seconds that motion. Are there any board members opposed to the suspension of rules for this ordinance? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. The rules are suspended, Mr. Butita.
Then I move for the passage of
Moved by
that.
Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Guevara. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Yes, Mr. Arena.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make the board aware, when this issue was being considered at the General Assembly, my association followed it. The concern we raised at that time is they increased the fee from $9 to $18, but the concern that we had was that they changed it so that a board is established at the state level, all the money is aggregated, and then that board decides how it gets redistributed. So I felt at the time that it was possible that we would see less money come back to Winnebago County, because if the board is dominated by other areas of the state, then those areas would see the money return. Alan Zeiss from our Housing Authority was instrumental in the adoption of the original law that did this, and he felt comfortable with it. And so, you know, my association didn't get involved, but I just want all of you to know what went on. And I think that as time passes, we should pay attention to how much money is being collected locally and how much money is being returned here, and then possibly have to address that with our state legislators if we're not getting our fair share back. I just wanted to put that on everyone's radar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Salgado.
Yeah, so to Mr. Arena, do you know before that they do the same structure as they're doing now, where they're allocating, deciding, and dispersing the money, or was it a percentage based on whatever? So the question that I have is, prior to this new $9 to $18, right, change, when it was 9, how was the money released to counties, cities? Was it the same as like the $18 now that we have, that it's the same formula, just when it was $9?
It's my understanding that when it was $9, that money was, that was collected in Winnebago County, stayed in Winnebago County, that it was, and I don't know what the disbursement mechanism was. I want to say it was through the Housing Authority, but I'm not certain of that. But the establishment of this board was new. And so these dollars are what's collected when there's a sale of property, right? You sell the property and they collect a fee of $9. So to the average citizen, it's not a great impact. I just want to make sure that it's not, in the long run, money being siphoned off from here and being utilized elsewhere.
Okay.
And I don't think we have a say in this, right? I don't even know exactly why we're voting on it, because it's a state mandate, so I'm not really clear on why our action's necessary. But so I'm voting yes, but I just wanted you to be aware of the problem.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to approval of this ordinance? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Okay, we have next an ordinance amending the recorders. Oh, yeah, the same one, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Ordinance for a budget amendment for violent crime reduction in Illinois communities. It's a grant extension, and I move to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend by Mr. Butita. Is there a second by Mr. Guevara? Are there any board members opposed to the suspension of rules? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. The rules are suspended, Mr. Butita.
Okay, I move for the passage of that ordinance.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Ms. Crosby. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Hearing none, are there any board members opposed to the approval of this ordinance? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
And then lastly, we have an ordinance for a budget amendment approval for the circuit clerk's part-time staff, and I move to suspend the rules.
Moved by Mr. Butita to suspend. Is there a second? Mr. Thompson seconds that motion. Are there any board members opposed to the suspension of rules? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. The rules are suspended. Mr. Butita.
I move for the passage of the ordinance.
Moved by Mr. Butita. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Hansard. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to the approval of this ordinance? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Okay, so we will not have a finance meeting next Thursday, but 2 weeks from today will be our next finance meeting.
2 weeks from today is the next finance meeting. Thank you, Mr. Butita. Got the zoning committee, Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Economic Development Committee. No report. Very good. Operations and Administrative Committee. Mr.
Chairman, we have no report.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. We got a Public Works Committee. Mr. Tassoni's on his way. I assume we have a committee. No report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, board members. And your Public Works Committee brings forth 2 items this evening. First is Resolution 23-023, and it's a resolution to request permission from IDOT for intermittent closure of Illinois Route 75 for the GFNY Rockford Cycling Event, and I would move that item and speak to it as well.
Moved by Mr. Tassoni, second by Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for those of you who may be cycling enthusiasts or know people of that, I guess this is a huge event. It's going to take place, so I think it's sometime in August. Starts out of the Venetian Club, goes 60 or 90 miles, and people are coming from all over the world to go cycling. So it's a good thing. It was postponed last year. They didn't have the event because of things, but it's supposed to be on this year. And August 6th is when it'll be, and they're expecting a bunch of cyclists.
Very good, Mr. Tassoni. Any further discussion on this resolution? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next item is a Resolution 23-024, and it's a resolution authorizing the obligation or retirement of bond payments from MFT funds. I would so move that item.
Moved by Mr. Tassoni, second by Mr. McCarthy. Is there any discussion, Mr. Tassoni?
This is just an annual resolution mandated by the state. It's just to appropriate the use of MFT funds to make these bond payments.
Very good. Any further discussion on this resolution? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to the approval of this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. Next is Public Safety and Judiciary Committee, Mr. Lindmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first resolution is a resolution authorizing execution of a First Amendment to the Public Safety Sales Tax Agreement by and between the County of Winnebago, Illinois, 17th Judicial Court and Remedies Renewing Lives. I'm out of order. It's actually the second one on your agenda, but I so move.
Okay, so he's made a motion on item number 3. And is there a second? Second by Ms. Hansard. Is there any discussion, Mr. Limick, on your part? Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is one of the things that, I've talked about before. That's my opinion that we should be utilizing the mental health board when something comes up that's related to substance abuse or mental health. One, because, and I realized that the public safety sales tax, when it was implemented, there was this commitment to devote money towards these uses, but at that time, there was no mental health tax. So that's a debatable point on whether or not the source of the funding. But I think part of the problem that I see here is that we're being asked to make a decision about providing these substance abuse services when I myself don't feel qualified to make that decision. It would be better if that board, where the expertise is, are the ones making the decision. And what my concern is here, in looking into it, what they've told me is that the goal is they're having trouble finding the counselors based on the requirements for the position, and so they want to ease on the standard that's required. So what it would say then is, before you had to have a bachelor's degree and you had to have a certification from the state. And now what they're saying is, if you don't have one or the other, as long as you're working towards the certification, then you can be placed in the position. And I think that language, working towards, is too vague. In my opinion, it doesn't matter as much if somebody has a bachelor's degree as if they've actually gone through the proper training. So the way it's written now, I have a bachelor's degree, right? And if I sign up for the training but haven't participated in the training, then am I qualified by this ordinance? Because I'm not qualified to do substance abuse training, right? And I wouldn't, but, so I think we're creating a standard here that is wrong. So I would prefer if we could better define that term, working towards, like, are you currently enrolled? Do you maintain enrollment? Is there a time frame in which you have to complete it? And this is mostly for the state training aspect of it. I really don't care if they have a bachelor's degree. I don't think the college degree is really critical to provide a service. There's people, all kinds of people in the world doing great things without a college education. So that's not what's most important to me, but I don't support this the way it's written. So that's my position on it. Thank you.
Mr. Webster?
Yeah, thank you. I pretty much feel the same way. Working towards is a very vague statement there, really, when you think about it. I mean, I could say I'm working toward being a better man. Would that qualify me for this position? I don't know anything about what it's all about to begin with. So, you know, if I was working towards a degree in liberal arts, would that qualify me for a position like this? So I think this needs more work. I'm not in favor of it there. The Mental Health Board, from what I understand, they're swimming in excess dollars, surplus dollars, that garnered much more tax money than they thought it would when they got the health board. And so I think that they should look at this, and this should be under their watch, not ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Marlena Dockin had her hand up. If that's okay, I'll let her speak.
Yeah, working towards a CADC, what that means is that you're working towards your hours. I'm not sure what it is in Illinois, but it might be 2,080 hours. So it's somebody who has a bachelor's degree, but they do not have their hours working with people with substance abuse. Everybody who, it's a specialty. So they're working towards it. It means that they're actively working with people who have addiction issues, and all of those hours are counting towards their degree. And the same would hold true for that bachelor's degree, because you could get a CADC without having a bachelor's degree. A person could have an associate's degree, or maybe even not an associate's, but have the hours that they needed to get their CADC. There are some people who are just simply CADCs, but they're working towards, now they want to get their bachelor's degree, so they're working towards their bachelor's degree as well. They've already got their CADC and they're working towards their bachelor's. And the other way around has their bachelor's and working towards their CADC. What it means is they're putting in their hours that are, it's sort of like your clinicals. When you're a nurse and you graduate, you go and you work, and you're still working and you're doing the work, but you have to do a certain amount of hours in order to get licensed.
Thank you. Mr. Guevara?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Lindmark and then potentially a follow-up. Was there any data presented in committee regarding the efficacy of treatment provided by counselors under the proposed standard? In other words, the standard is going to change, or their qualifications. Does anybody else do this anywhere, and was any data presented that shows us how well it works?
It was not brought up in committee, but I can refer to Marlena for that.
Marlena?
I don't have the data, but I can try to find out.
And then a quick follow-up. Is the standard change in part, related in any way to pay rate?
Pay rate?
Yeah, so in other words, because they're working towards their hours and haven't achieved them, is it a financial?
It was more to
incentive?
get applicants in the door is what we were told.
Very good. Ms. Crosby?
The company vetted this issue pretty thoroughly, and the standard of 2,080 hours is equivalent to a 40-hour work week for 1 year. So it's very difficult to cram in your 200 or 2,080 hours in a short period of time. So this allows the individual to participate and complete those necessary hours, which are extensive, along with their regular 40-hour work week, and still working in some cases where they have the certification towards their bachelor's. So it's not an easy designation to accomplish. It is time intensive, and this is a necessary thing for Loves Park for those dispatch services. They're in a position right now where it's critical that these services be provided. So I speak in favor of the motion.
This resolution, Ms. Crosby, is concerning the remedies renewing lives.
Of course.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, we know your position going forward.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other discussion on this particular resolution? Ms. Fellers?
I can't recall a time previously when the board has weighed in on the hiring requirements for an independent agency that we fund, or for an intergovernmental agency that we fund. Is that a usual practice? I don't know who to ask that question of. But I trust the expertise of those who are hiring at Remedies, and also the expertise of Ms. Dawkin. And I don't pretend to be an expert on everything that I vote on, so I do have to defer to them and their wisdom, and I'm in support of this so that the funding can go through.
Thank you, Ms. Fellers. Any further discussion?
I would like to state for the record that
Yes.
the 2,080 hours, I'm not 100% sure if that's the number. It's the number for one of the clinical degrees. I don't know if it's that one.
Thank you, Ms. Dawkin. All right. Are there any board members opposed to the approval of this resolution number 3? So we have 2, Mr. Webster, Mr. Arena. Any other opposition? Very good. Please cast a yes for all other members present. Mr. Lindmark.
So I went out of order to get the easy one out of the way, so I'll be up here a while. Next resolution is authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute an agreement with the city of Loves Park for dispatch services, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. McDonald, or second by Mr. McDonald. Moved by Mr. Lindmark. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Mr. Scroll.
Mr. Chair and committee, I had some questions about this resolution, specifically on page 3 under rates and billing, 7A. I got some answers to that question today. I made it clear to the committee at the time that my support for this resolution on this floor would be dependent on the answers to that question. I am not opposed to this in any way, shape, or form, but after discussing the information I got today, it's led to several more questions. I would like to refer this back to committee. I don't want to take time away from this board to deal with this issue and ask all the questions that I have. I think it would be a more efficient use of our time if we did let the committee handle this. So I have a motion to send this back to committee.
Mr. Lindmark, are you willing to withdraw your motion to approve?
I'd like to keep it going here on the floor.
You want to, so Mr. Lindmark wants to keep that going?
Second?
Second to keep going?
Second on Mr. Sproul's motion.
Yep, we have a motion and a second to send back. We need a vote. Yep. All right, so we got a motion by Mr. Scroll and a second by Mr. Tassoni. Is there any discussion to refer this back to committee?
Can I speak on my motion, please?
Yes.
Under 7A, it states that Loves Park will voluntarily pay the county. It also states that Loves Park acknowledges that nothing in this agreement is to be construed as Loves Park acknowledging any obligation to pay any fee. I find that troubling. I also have several other questions here, including, if you look on page 2, under ownership and responsibility, 2B, under personnel, it says the county shall provide at its own expense the staff necessary. We didn't fully discuss in committee whether providing this service would require the need to hire additional staff. I don't know if we need to hire additional staff, and if we do, I don't know if the fee would cover the complete cost of those individuals, or if the county would be on the hook for those. So, and I have several other questions, and I just simply don't want to take time away from the work of this board this evening to discuss those things.
Thank you, Mr. Scroll. Mr. Guevara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Chairman Lindmark. Mr. Lindmark, at any time in the committee meeting, was there a reference or a question regarding previous contracts with Loves Park and how this contract differed from those in any way?
No, there wasn't.
Any further discussion on the motion to refer this back to committee? Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Chief Saganek, is there going to be a problem caused by this being not voted on tonight?
We're going to go ahead and start dispatching for Loves Park Fire on Monday, the 26th. So if we send this back to committee to work out the language in the agreement, I mean, I don't see that as a problem because we're moving forward either way.
Okay, and my second question is, so the point that Mr. Scroll brought up, what does this mean? So it says, he said Loves Park will voluntarily pay the county. And if they, what does that mean, voluntarily pay? I mean, why is the word voluntary in there?
Mr. Scroll or
No, to
Ms. Lafcaria?
Ms. Vaughn,
Thank
I
you,
apologize,
Chairman.
Ms. Vaughn.
So I became aware of this issue late yesterday, so I've been in communication with Loves Park to revise that section. Loves Park is, and I don't want to misrepresent what their position is, but they believe that they're not obligated to pay because the county is required to provide these services, but they will pay. So the word voluntarily may get stricken out, but we were still talking about it as of today, so.
And are we obligated to provide these services to them?
There's a little disagreement on that, but the proposed language will be possibly language from our current PSAP agreement, which is still being discussed, unfortunately.
So you don't have a legal opinion at this point in time of whether or not the county has a legal
I
obligation?
do not, because it was just brought to my attention there was an issue with this section.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to go to Mr. McDonald and Ms. Scroll. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This whole project, and you could almost call it an experiment, started way back with Chief Carner. He's the one that got this started, got the wheels going on it. For the safety of everyone in our county, right now, if Loves Park is dispatched to a call, the county 911 center takes the call. They get a hold of Loves Park Fire's dispatch center, losing valuable minutes on what's going on. And Loves Park's not the only one that operates this way, but Loves Park is the first to come to plate and say, hey, we know that you don't have everything in place that you need right now. You do not have properly trained fire department dispatchers right now, but we need to take the first step so that we can know. The county 911 center needs to know what they don't know. So instead of encouraging, like Chief Carner had tried to do with, I think there's 8 different departments they were dealing with, Chief Saganek? Instead of getting all 8 to go to the Winnebago County 911 all at once and flood them and go, oh crap, we didn't know what we didn't know, Loves Park's making the first step. It's $15 per call. I think Loves Park does 2,500, 3,000 calls a year. Let's get this started because it's better for all levels of public service. I know that there's been a murder scene where the only reason the fire service knew to order extra ambulances was because they were listening to the sheriff's department radios. Had everybody been on the same frequency, that information could have been relayed much quicker. So let's push this forward and get this started. I think it could be great for the public safety of our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Ms. Scroll.
Thank you, Chairman. But I also want to thank Mr. Scroll because of his position over the years. He knows more about the fire department, the 911, than any of us sitting on this board. And for him to, I applaud the fact that he found these things in that contract that needed to be changed. I too believe it needs to be laid over, so when that contract is signed, it's signed properly and it has the right verbiage in it. And that gives our attorney the time to investigate what needs to be in there properly.
Thank you, Ms. Squirrel. Mr. Squirrel?
Other than just getting the language in the contract correct, I think it's crucial for us as board members to fully understand the ramifications of our vote. And if we take a vote on this without getting some of these questions answered tonight, I don't believe we're doing that. I'm not even sure we have a total understanding of the liability or the cost to the county if we agree to this.
Thank you, Mr. Squirrel. Any other discussion, Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Loves, who's paying for this now? Who's paying for this service for Loves Park today? But they're paying, not us, they're paying Rockcom. Okay, so they're currently paying for it?
They're paying Mercy Health, Rockcom?
Okay. So they're, right, so we have no reason, I mean, so this is a one-year deal. If we go ahead and vote on it and pass it, then it's done, and if changes, you know, if in the state's attorney's office changes should have been made, can we revisit it and amend it? There's nothing that would prevent us from doing that, right?
Thank you, Chairman. No, an amendment can come back before the board, committee and the board for approval. But if you pass it tonight, you're passing it as is, unless an amendment is made on the floor.
In your legal opinion, does this need work?
I will say if the board, I will defer to the board. It's my understanding that changes want to be made and questions need to be answered. And I do want to have further discussions with Loves Park because I want both parties to agree to what the agreement says. I would rather the county board not approve something and then Loves Park disagrees with what's in the agreement.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Booker?
Thank you, Chairman. With all due respect, I did work in the county 911 center for 3 years as a supervisor. I think it's imperative that we get started with our fire departments within our county, and we can make amendments as we go. Again, it's imperative that we get this started with Loves Park. Loves Park is the second largest fire department in our county right now, and we've got to get going with our 911 center. So I've seen the hiccups within the 911 center with rural fire and working with Mercy Health and phone calls back and forth, and seconds do matter. So let's get started with Loves Park. I'm going to be pushing for a vote on it tonight, and we can make our amendments as we go along. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Booker. Well, we're going to have Ms. Crosby had her hand up also.
Now that I'm on the right motion. Keith is right. The issue here is public safety. And lives have been lost because calls have been misdirected and where the jurisdictions lie. And to me, we can't afford that. If we pass this tonight, we have it for 1 year, and then in the next 12 months, we can negotiate an agreement between Loves Park and us regarding all these little nuances and take it from there. But we desperately need to have this service taken care of because it's costing our citizens serious trouble, and I don't want that on my conscience or on my shoulders. It's time to move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Crosby. Mr. Tassoni, you had your hand up earlier.
I think maybe there's others in front of me, maybe, but I'll speak since you called them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think I heard Mr. Saganik said they're going to start this on Monday the 26th, regardless of the passage of this resolution. Did I hear you correct, sir?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So this is going to happen regardless if we pass it tonight. It's just the language needs to be tweaked and amended, so to speak, and the state's attorney spoke to that as well as Mr. So this is going to happen regardless of what if we send it back to committee. That's all I wanted to clarify.
Very good. Ms. Fellers? All right. Any other discussion? Ms. Goro?
Thank you. I still agree to the fact that no contract is complete until all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted, and it should be right the first time. So they can't come back and say, well, you agreed to this. And then we have more problems as we go forward. If Loves Park wants to go, and our sheriff's department wants to go ahead and start it, that's fine, but a contract can't be signed until everything is completed and both parties do agree on it. So whether they start it now or start it later, that's fine, but the contracts have to be in order before we sign them.
Thank you. Mr. Guevara?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for State's Attorney Vaughn. It might be premature, but in your discussions with Loves Park, was there any indication that they were open to changes?
No. One, because we've been negotiating this agreement for several months at this point, and then one of the attorneys that was responsible for this agreement was on vacation, so he was trying to discuss it with me and look at the current PSAP agreement, and it was just a lot within the last 24 hours. So unfortunately, he didn't get back to me today for any further discussion. So I think they will be open to revising it, but it would have to be mutually agreed upon.
Thank you, Mr. Guevara. Okay, I'm going to have the clerk Gummo call the roll on the motion to refer this back to committee. Clerk Gummo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will start with Mr. Salgado. Yes. Mr. Scroll.
Yes.
Mr. Tassoni.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson. No. Mr. Webster.
No.
Mr. Arena.
Yes.
Mr. Booker.
No.
Mr. Butita.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I did not hear. No, thank you. Mrs. Crosby.
No.
Ms. Fellers.
Yes.
Mrs. Gorel.
Yes.
Mr. Guevara.
Yes.
Ms. Hansard.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Lindmark.
No.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
No.
That's all we have, because we have 3 board members absent, and Sweeney is absent. That is correct. Thank you all. Mr. Chairman, that is 10 board members yes, 7 board members no, and 3 board members absent.
I believe that passes. Is that correct? So the motion to refer back passes.
Send back to committee.
Yes. Very good.
There you go. Good job,
We
man.
will move on. Mr. Lindmark.
We'll get to the easy ones now. Resolution authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute a Winnebago County Mental Health Board funding agreement and service agreements. And I so move.
Moved by Mr. Lindmark, second by Ms. Hansard. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Mr. Lindmark.
Next one is a resolution to approve execution of amendment number 2 under ICJIA, award number 419060, Violent Crime Reduction in Illinois Communities Program, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Lindmark, second by Mr. Hoffman. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Mr. Lindmark.
Final resolution is to approve execution of subaward agreement number 2 under ICJIA award number 419060, Violent Crime Reduction in Illinois Communities Program, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Lindmark, second by Mr. McCarthy. Is there any discussion? Mr. Lindmark, can you let us know what ICJIA is?
Pardon me?
I'm just kidding.
Illinois criminal justice.
Just want to keep the fun going. All right, so we have a motion and a
Illinois
second. Is there
criminal
any
justice.
discussion?
something, something.
Mr. McCarthy.
Mr. McCarthy?
No discussion by Mr. Limmark. All right, are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Thank you. Mr. Limbark, does that conclude your report?
It sure does, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to unfinished business, I believe. Did I miss anything? No. All right, we have unfinished business. We have appointments that were read in on April 13th, 2023. Up tonight is for the Board of Review. Annual compensation is $27,809.86. First applicant nominee is Pamela Cunningham, which is a reappointment. Her term will expire May of 2025. The second is Jay Douthard. It is also a reappointment, and his term will also end in May of 2025. Is there a motion to approve? We got a motion by Mr. Guevara, second by Ms. Gorel. Is there any discussion on these appointments? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to appointing these two appointees? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Thank you. We have new business. Is there any new business in front of the board this evening? Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening, you know, we had some discussion regarding a shortage of mental health care workers in the community, and I think we've heard that, you know, there's an abundance of dollars on that mental health board as far as what's been brought in by tax revenues. And I brought it up to my caucus last week, and I don't know what their ordinance says as far as how they operate, but maybe the message could get back to that mental health board that maybe they could set up some kind of program that would help offset costs for persons that wanted to get their degrees and whatnot, and help them with those degrees if they made a commitment to stay in this community and provide those services. So I'd like that message to get back. I know Tim Neighbor's not here tonight, but I'd like that message to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. We'll make sure Mr. Neighbors understands what you're asking and move forward. So next Wednesday, the mayor of Rockford and myself are holding a news conference with a group of entities that are going to be addressing the behavioral health issues in this community and a lack of providers to come up with some solutions to exactly this problem. So that's coming up on Wednesday, next week. Mr. Webster.
Yeah, follow up to what Mr. Tassoni said. I think we're on the same page here. And also the comments that I made earlier about the mental health board. I really think that mental health issue is extremely important. And that is really something that they say the term is not in my wheelhouse sort of thing, but the mental health board sold that to the people of Winnebago County, the importance of having the mental health board to treat all sorts of mental health, all sorts of issues dealing with mental health. I feel all of those should be referred to the mental health board first before they even come before this board here. That's why they raised that kind of money. From what I understand, they're garnering twice the money they thought they would from that mental health tax. So I don't understand why they're coming to our general fund or our public safety fund or any of our other funds before they're not brought to the mental health board first. If they have surplus cash that they're dealing with, it only makes sense to me. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Webster. Is there any other new business in front of the board this evening? Ms. Fellers.
About the Comcast program that Ms. Sage brought up about the Internet Essentials. Every single student at RPS 205 participates in the National School Lunch Program, every single one. And so I just wanted to notify all of our county board members that you could pass that on to your constituents, that this is available for all RPS 205 students and families.
Thank you, Ms. Fellers. Any other new business? Ms. Corl.
Yes, if I may say real quick, thank you, Angie, and they wanted to be here too, and this is an annual that they want to come back to report, and was so happy to hear during one of the last meetings over at Rave, for the first time, I don't know how many years, 13 years, I think, 14, we're going to make a profit. So we got to maintain, stay on track, and I'm glad to be representing the county on the Rave board. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Speaker McCarthy. Thank you, Ms. Gorel. Any other new business? Well, we got to have announcements and communications by Clerk Lori Gummow.
Thank you, Mr. Webster, for allowing me to say the items listed below were received as correspondence.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quickly, two brief announcements. Want to congratulate Tammy Gorel, who is an employee of our sheriff's office. She celebrated 40 years today of employment, so congratulations, Tammy. Would also like to regretfully announce the resignation of Brett Frazier as our Animal Services Administrator. He's been with us for 5 years, and he took a position north of here in the beautiful state of Wisconsin. So he will be with us for about another month, and then he will be vacating his position. I've notified Human Resources, and we're going to initiate a recruitment ASAP. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Webster. Moved by Mr. Webster, second by Mr. Guevara. Does anybody want to stay here longer? No? All right. We are adjourned.